Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 25 series, Can We Save the Oakland A's? And free agency filings for the 2043 to 2044 offseason happened today. Unfortunately, given that we've got the 27th sized budget in all of baseball, and we already have the 18th largest player payroll, we are very unlikely to be active in free agency this year, which is a bit unfortunate because several of our former players, Jorge Mendoza, Jake Ortega, Byron Brain, and Alejandro Landin among them, are available this year. Certainly would love to reunite with Jake Ortega, affectionately known as the franchise, who won a couple of MVP awards, a Rookie of the Year, and 3 World Series championships with us, along with a boatload of playoff MVP awards while he was with us before he priced himself out of Oakland and signed with the Yankees. He is back on the market at this point, but as a 36-year-old who is wrecked physically and looking for $16 million, just don't think it's practical for us to consider bringing him back. Frequent commenter Kevin McDowell did share a potential path to us connecting with Ortega, and it would be very realistic to do, given that we're trying to win a 3rd consecutive World Series championship, though. As much as I like the storyline of reuniting with Mr. Ortega, I don't know that I'm willing to do this, but the path that Kevin suggested was a very logical one, and one that we may be following a year from now when Darnell Selvey, Luis Godina, and Chisin Iwata are all set to be making $20 to $25 million, and at best we'll be able to bring back 2 of them. But what Kevin suggested was trading Darnell Selvey now, which would get $17.5 million off the books for us, moving our young designated hitter Juan Ramirez, who, although not good defensively at first base, is at least competent in a corner outfield spot. So you move Ramirez to left field to take over for Selvey, save $17.5 million, pick up an interesting prospect or 2 for Selvey, and then spend the money that you just saved on Selvey to largely bring in Ortega and make him your designated hitter. It is the obvious path if we wanted to reconnect with Ortega and keep the team as competitive as possible. But given that Selvey at this point in his career is younger, better, and healthier than Mr. Ortega, and we are, as I mentioned, trying to go for a 3-peat next year, is interesting an idea as I think it is. I think our only real chance for a reunion with Ortega would be if he lingers on the market for an extended period of time and perhaps his price comes down, given that he is still an effective offensive player when he's healthy, and actually still a decent defender with good speed when he's healthy, although I think playing him in the field is what's caused him to start, or play more accurately, only 33 games each of the past 2 seasons. But I'm pretty confident that someone will end up making an offer to him that we cannot match. And another free agent that we'll keep an eye on is Finley Tatnell out of England. Sean Grattan, head of the Welsh Worldwide Scouting Department branch, suggested trying to connect with Tatnell. I think if he were ever willing to accept a minor league contract, I definitely would. Given that he does, we think, have a world-class eye and good home run power to go with competent defense and a left-handed bat, that does look even more potentially prodigious against right-handed pitching. I'm pretty confident there's some team out there that will give him a major league contract for $3 million. I think we could afford the $3 million. We'd obviously just need to adjust scouting and player development down a tiny bit, or perhaps trade away somebody. But given the way our roster looks right now, I don't think Tatnell is one of the 26 best players who should be coming north with us. And I'm not willing to pay $3 million for a guy that we'd want to stash in AAA. So I don't expect his price to come down. I don't expect him to ultimately be willing to accept a minor league deal. But if he does, I'd definitely like to bring him on board for the large contingent of scouts, not just Sean, that we do have working hard for us over in England and Scotland and Wales, Ireland and Northern Ireland. So long story short, there's definitely several players that we'll be monitoring over the course of the beginning of this free agency period. But I would expect the primary activity that we're in during this episode is getting ready for the Rule 5 draft, participating in the Rule 5 draft, and then ultimately completing our scouting for the international amateur free agent period that will open up in about a month and a half. We've simmed ahead a couple of weeks, and some of the top players have started to come off the boards, notably Alejandro Espinoza, the excellent young pitcher from Kansas City, who is now a member, not surprisingly, of the New York Yankees. 5-year, $121 million deal with an opt-out after this season. Espinoza is fragile physically. We thought about trading for him near the trade deadline last year. He ended up healthy with a 13-7 record, led the American League in strikeouts and pitcher WAR. But even though he was healthy and we decided not to trade for him, we still ended up winning the World Series. So it worked out for us. It worked out for him. And now he is a member of the New York Yankees for at least this upcoming season. 10 days away from the Rule 5 draft. So right now we are re-scouting all of our Rule 5 eligible players just to have the latest information possible before we decide whether we want to add another player or two to the 38 players that we have on the 40-man roster at this point. And we've reunited with one former player, but not a particularly exciting one. Kamani Obanor, the veteran who was with us many years ago, has signed a minor league contract with us. Just view him as some organizational depth at this point. The soon-to-be 34-year-old is wrecked physically, but does bring some positive traits into the clubhouse and certainly can still be effective AA or AAA pitcher for us. And if we had a bunch of pitcher injuries, maybe he gets another chance to reunite with us. He was on our 2036 and 2038 World Championship teams. Obanor had some really nice years for us, led the league in holds in 2037, and overall pitched parts of 4 seasons for us before we moved on from him when he got more expensive. 108 ERA plus and a 97 FIP minus for Obanor while he was with us in Oakland, which are both better than his career marks. Another prominent former player, and this one even more prominent, is Jake Ortega, supposedly getting close to a deal with Cincinnati, checking in on the franchise. He's also got an offer from the Dodgers that he's claiming, and he's now looking for about $17.5 million for 1 year. I think unless the price comes down, this is not something we should pursue. But if he is only going to be on a 1-year deal, it's very conceivable that we could look next year at this time to try to fit him on the roster, particularly if we do the move that was recommended and perhaps decide to move on from Darnell Selvey down the line. And we have gotten our updated scouting report finally on Subby Tatnell, and his demand has come down a bit. Kind of looks exactly as we thought he might. He's now looking for a minor league contract, which becomes a major league contract if promoted. I would not mind having a English/Scottish player on the team to represent the strong presence that the worldwide scouting department does have across the pond. At least it would guarantee that we'd get to look at Subby in spring training. I don't think he'd ultimately make the team, so he likely would have the opportunity to opt out when he was not promoted within 30 days. But it is kind of a low-risk option for us. Something I'm going to keep thinking about, but I'm not ready, given our financial limitations, to make him that offer quite yet, even though it's really just a placeholder with the $2 million or so that we might be potentially paying him. And as we get ready for the Rule 5 draft, we will likely not be a significant participant. We're going to have to cut somebody to pick anyone in the Rule 5 draft after we added 2 players to the 40-man roster to protect them. One was the first baseman, Jeremy Wright. You may remember him, a first-round draft pick of ours in 2039. Still looks like he could become a pretty interesting hitter, and he's actually also a pretty interesting outfielder. We've been playing him at first base to get him more versatile defensively, but ultimately he will be an outfielder for us, most likely if and when he makes it to the majors. Split last year between high A ball and double A ball, combined for 32 homers and 91 ribbies at the 2 levels, with a 145 WRC plus and 3.5 WAR in most of a season in double A. So did not want to risk losing Mr. Wright. The other guy that we protected was a little bit older. You may remember him, Jim West. Picked him up in a trade with the Yankees a little over 2 years ago. Hasn't developed the way we hoped, and he's almost 25 years old, but he's a left-handed hitting middle infielder who's good defensively. As I noted, the bat hasn't developed as much as we would have hoped, but he is in the development lab with us right now. And looking at his ratings, he definitely could be a usable player against right-handed pitching. Put up a 111 WRC plus for us in Double A last year with 26 homers and 72 ribbies. Negatively, he did hit just 234, but think he's likely to be better than just about anyone who's available in the Rule 5, so we decided to protect Clank West as well. And as we get ready for the Rule 5, another one of our former stars has signed with another team. Jorge Mendoza, the outstanding catcher, signed with the Minnesota Twins. 5 years, $86.4 million. So definitely not the type of money he was making before. He actually opted out from his contract with the Red Sox, where I believe he had been with the Red Sox. Yeah, and he had 3 years left, I believe, at close to $30 million a year. So he got some very bad advice to opt out of that contract. Still an outstanding bat with a very good glove. Put up a 113 WRC plus for Boston this year, but with us having the exquisite Jonah Richards behind the plate, we moved on from Mendoza a couple years ago and have never looked back. And we ended up losing 2 players in the Rule 5 draft. We did not pick anybody. Josh Gabrielle was previously a relatively high pick of ours, 25 years old now, did make it up to AAA last year where he put up an ERA of close to 4, but given our outstanding pitching depth, the fact that he's fragile physically, a borderline starter, given that his changeup is not good, even though he does have exceptional stamina and below average control. Just couldn't make a case in my mind to fit him onto the 40-man roster. But Gabrielle, former 10th round pick of ours in 2036, certainly has developed well. The other guy that we lost would have been the 41st man on the roster, so this one hurts a little bit, but we only have 40 spots, so we know we're going to lose some guys. Luis Piedra, a catcher, 24 years old, solid defensively, and the bat looks decent, although we haven't seen that yet in terms of his actual performance. He hit 201 in high A ball last year before we just finally decided we needed to see him in double A, where he hit a $199. He did combine for 13 homers at the two levels. Certainly looks like he could be a competent major league backup catcher, but as I noted earlier, we've got the brilliant Jonah Richards at catcher. We've got the outstanding young defender at catcher, Luis Covarrubias, who's now going to be our backup. And we made a trade for Mr. Mabe with the Cubs, who we think is better than Piedra. So ultimately decided not to move him up to the 40-man roster, and we'll see whether the Reds keep him on the roster for the entire season, and whether Gabriel remains on the roster of the White Sox for the entire season, or we get those guys back at some point. And another one of our former players has signed a contract. Alejandro Fleelandine, longtime middle infielder for us, is wrecked physically and only competent offensively at this point. Still pretty good defensively and a good influence in the clubhouse. Signed a 2-year deal worth almost $9 million potentially. Next year will vest if he plays 135 games. Kind of doubt that will be the case, given that the last time he played over 135 games was when he was still with us in 2041, and he barely made it then. And many of the big free agents have been coming off the market. Jake Ortega still out there. And says he's looking for more and more. Wants a 1-year deal at $18.6 million with some incentives for plate appearances, MVP, and All-Star as well. As much as I'd love to reunite with the franchise, at that price, I just can't justify it. And as expected, we've lost Esteban Narvaez, a rental pitcher who was with us last year, not particularly effective, and he got a pretty good contract for him at a guy who's going to be 34 years old soon. 4 years, almost $69 million from the Chicago Cubs. So we wish Mr. Narvaez good luck. We did not get a compensatory pick for him, was not eligible, so we're closing in now on international amateur free agency, finishing up some of our final scouting there, and that'll be the last thing we review this episode before we start making some decisions. And we won't make any decisions until we've given the worldwide scouting department 24 hours to opine on what we should do. Before we do take a look at the top players available in international amateur free agency, though, check in briefly on what's going on in the development lab. Jacoby Manelli excelling in his quality of contact program. We also have a few other guys excelling. Devin Carrick, the young outfielder, excelling in generating bat speed. Federico Arriola, 3-time defending American League Cy Young Award winner Federico Arriola, also excelling in some secondary pitch improvement. Unfortunately, Juan Pimentel, the 2-time American League MVP and defending American League MVP at this point, is struggling with some work on his plate discipline. And Mike Mercer, one of the top young pitchers in our organization, also struggling to improve his pitch movement. So a fair amount of frustrated players as well. Overall, can't say that we love the way the development lab is going this off season, but there's still 6 to 7 weeks for those things to change. And we have made it to the start of IAFA signing period. Always a time when it's interesting to hear what the worldwide scouting department is thinking. Before we get there, though, we'll take one final look at what Mr. Ortega says to us. Still says he's looking for $18.6 million and that he's got an offer out there from the Brewers. Was hoping his price might become a little more reasonable, but unfortunately that does not appear to be the case. And unfortunately for us, Finley Tatnell has signed with the Yankees. Subby did go for the minor league contract that becomes a major league contract if he's added to the 40-man roster, $2.12 million. Like I said, would have been interesting to bring him on board, but just didn't feel that at 31 years old, with the profile that he has, that he was going to likely make our 26-man roster, unfortunately. And in our most recent camp, we had 3 pitchers in there when we turn our attention to the IAFA pool. Jesus Garza, looking for $950,000, so he could certainly be a supplemental player to one big-time guy. Like the stamina and his ability to hold on runners, does have a potential 2 to 4 pitch arsenal, depending on how everything settles out. If he gets to 3 or 4 pitches, looks like he could be a competent major league starter if he reaches his full potential. Ramiro Rivera, another starting pitcher with good stamina, good at holding on runners. The question is whether that fastball will develop into a respectable major league pitch. Another guy who certainly looks like he could be a competent starter if he reaches his full potential. And the belle of the ball, as it were, when it comes to the IAFA pitching class, is Juan de la Cueva, Elastic Man. Potentially brilliant stuff and brilliant control. Movement we think could be above average, although he's got a lot of work to do to keep the ball in the park. Think he can ultimately have a 4-pitch arsenal. Don't like some of the negative personality traits, and unlike Ramira and Garza, who are both looking for under $1 million, De La Cueva looking for a pretty significant bid at $3.2 million. We do have $5.7 million to spend, which is as much as any team in baseball, so we should have some interesting options in front of us when this IAFA signing period begins. And there are 7 position players that we've had in camp most frequently, including all 4 of the 5-star ceiling prospects according to our scout. We'll take a look at the 3 slightly less regarded prospects first. One is the center fielder, Jorge Herrera. Really like the high adaptability and work ethic, like the durability. The right-handed hitter potentially has prodigious home run power and a great eye, but likely to strike out an insane amount of times. Herrera looking for $2.8 million. Catcher Juan Campos looking for $2.2 million. The 16-year-old is competent looking defensively. Do like the personality traits with the high adaptability and work ethic, and looks like his bat could certainly be a very solid bat for a major league catcher. The last of the non-5-star prospects, the center fielder Alfredo Galarza, looking for $3 million. The 16-year-old Colombian, potentially outstanding contact and gap power to go with excellent speed, good range in the outfield, durability, and a high work ethic. The power and the eye are only in the average-ish range, but still a very interesting profile to me. Sonic Kid, as I noted, looking for $3 million. And then the 4 4-star players, all looking for between 2.4 to 3.2 million. So if we go for any of these position players, we're probably just going to get one of them. Domingo Rivera, a shortstop. Great personality with high leadership, loyalty, adaptability, and intelligence. A very versatile potential defensive player who could have well above average home run power to go with a good eye, good gap power, and decent contact. Another shortstop, Nelson Ramirez. Solid speed, an outstanding bunter. Looks like he could be respectable defensively and potentially outstanding contact with outstanding home run power, above average gap power, and above average eye. Certainly another very interesting prospect, Governor Ramirez. Center fielder Juan Aroña. Looks like an absolute monster. Definitely looks more like a right fielder or perhaps a left fielder to me than a center fielder. but think he can be well above average in contact, gap power, and home run power with a potentially above average eye as well. A very interesting bat for Barbarian Arona. And last but not least, looking for the least money of any of these guys, $2.4 million, Gregorio Gaitan, 17-year-old Costa Rican, looks like a competent defensive corner outfielder, high work ethic, low greed, potentially interesting bat with above average contact and above average home run power if everything worked out. So definitely many interesting prospects on the board this year. It's always helpful for me to hear the feedback from the worldwide scouting department on who they would pursue. As I mentioned, we've got as much money to spend as anybody else, so it's just a matter of figuring out what our plan is going to be. And as I said, I'm going to wait now and give the worldwide scouting department some time to opine for me. So until our next episode, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.